you mentioned funding and that the different sides are going to be funded potentially by people outside of BC or by the government. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit how the funding works for both campaigns?
The rules haven't been finally set yet at the time of this interview, and we should be hearing more within weeks. But it's generally understood that there will be public funding for both sides, the yes side and the no side. And there will also be some restrictions on funding by outside organizations like Fair Vote Canada, so that there's a level playing field. One of the problems in BC politics in the past has been massive funding by corporations and unions on either sides of these issues. And so I understand the plan is, and you might know more about this than I do, Michael, to have a level playing field so there's roughly equal funding for both sides. To me, that sounds like it's fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think the whole credibility of this will be if people buy into it as an even-handed. I mean, there's been some controversy as well about the threshold of support, that it's not going to be 60 or 65%, that the government's saying 50% plus one. So I guess for you, part of that has to be the turnout. You've got to get a big voter turnout to make this seen as a credible, clear statement by citizens across the province.
Well, it's ironic because politicians often say, and actually the Premier of Prince Edward Island recently said this, they had a referendum on proportional representation. The yes side won, we want change. And he said, well, there was a relatively small turnout. But of course, if you compare the turnout in referenda to turnout in municipal election, even provincial elections, and federal elections, often the turnout in those elections is very disappointing as well, right? And so politicians will say, well, in referenda we need high turnout, but in our own elections it's okay if there's low turnout, which seems a little bit unfair. The other thing is, first past the post, the academics who have studied these issues have shown that first past the post tends to depress turnout. There's an academic from California, Aaron Lipchart, who I'm sure you know, has found that roughly 6 or 7% advantage in terms of turnout for proportional representation countries. So one of the reasons for bringing in proportional representation, we say, is it increases turnout, it increases voter engagement because people's votes actually really do count to elect somebody. And so that's one of the pitches we make. Turnout is important. And proportional representation systems tend to have better turnout.
And that gets hence again the summer campaign. And so for you, the campaign must have truly started months ago now.
It did. It started months ago. We've been knocking on doors. It's largely an information campaign at this point, trying to hear from people what they care about. And so we hear different things. Women are saying to us, what can we do about the underrepresentation of women? People in minority communities and other communities are saying, this isn't really relevant to us, so we're talking about why proportional representation makes our democratic process more relevant. So those are the kinds of conversations we're having on the doorstep.
Good.
Yeah.